Y'all, it's so good to be back, and I'm excited to be able to present this message tonight, this lesson and study. It's been an incredible one, just looking into all things concerning the weather. And let's just say it's not going to leave y'all having questions about whether or not it's conspiracy or fact. So I hope everybody's doing well out. Let's go ahead and let's get to it. All right, y'all. So, of course, I entitled this message Lucy in the Skies. And the reason for that, I was just thinking about, Lucifer, that old sneaky snake. He really likes to come in and play Captain Know-It-All. He loves to come in and pretend to be God, right? And in fact, it's his lie in the garden that really initiated this research for me, that the lie that you can be as the gods that he told Adam and Eve, right? And our Lord says, no, he is the one true God. He is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And so tonight, my hope is to shine a light to say that while these people out there do have these manipulation tools and accessibility, they indeed will never be the one true God. Hallelujah. All right, so let's get started. So geoengineering is kind of the name that it's given in the modern age of what they're trying to do. And these are a couple of images that I've chosen. One is, one is, it looks like the International Gemini Observatory, and that's the upper left. And it's just incredible that they could capture these images out there, of the many strikes of lightning. And this is part of that geoengineering that's going on. And then, of course, the upper right, we also have some strange cloud formations. And before I'm remiss, y'all, forgive me. Before I keep going, I wanted to also make an announcement. Tonight, I am going to have a special guest on, Captain Mac. I can't forget Captain Mac, so forgive me for that. Brother Captain Mac, he's going to be on doing a little interview. It was pre-recorded, so I'll be putting that in here in just a little bit. So, he was a pilot, both in the military and also commercial, but we'll get more into that here in a little bit when we get into the discussion about cloud seeding. Okay, back to the slides. So geoengineering, it is a modern technology that they are indeed using, and they're doing it to be able to shift weather patterns and possibly for, directed energy weapons as well. In Luke 21:25, scripture says, "And there shall be signs in the sun and in the moon and in the stars, and upon the earth distress of nations with perplexity, the sea and the waves roaring." And again, some of the imagery here, it boggles my mind. You've got these incredible streaks of lightning, like the upper right corner. It's the straight lightning. You don't see that very often. That is not something that is naturally occurring. And I would venture to say the same thing for the blue lightning that you can see up there. They call it a blue jet. And it actually zigs up from a thundercloud and goes into the stratosphere. That was taken over Nauru, the island of Nauru, in February 2019. And just incredible. I think the bottom left is due to HARP technology, and we'll talk about that. And then I had to throw in the one in the upper left because we talk about flat Earth here. Because you know what? The Bible tells us it is. We live on a flat, stationary, non-rotating Earth that has been put here intentionally by our Creator. It's not just happenstance. It's not just because of, some big bang. I like, it's kind of, silly to say, but I like it when they say, yeah, the Big Bang. God spoke and bang, it happened. That's what the Big Bang was in my mind. But I believe here on the upper left, you can see the clouds are actually behind and in front of the moon, which would mean that the moon is much closer than what they tell us it is, right? As far as the winds in the sea and the waves roaring and the perplexity, when we look at the lexicon and even just Strong's Concordance, we see these definitions. Perplexity, it means a quandary, a state of quandary, right? Aporia. And we see sea, which is what we think it is. It's generally the sea, the ocean. We see waves, the salos, and that is a vibration. That is a billow, a wave. Now, I want you to remember vibration, right? We call them waves, don't we, when we're talking about frequencies and energies. And roaring is ekie ko, and it's to make a loud noise that is reverberate, roar, sound. And I think that that's important when we're talking about what the Lord is telling us here in Luke 21:25. There are going to be signs in the sun and in the moon and in the stars, distress of nations, perplexity, right, with the sea and waves roaring. And these folks are absolutely doing all that they can to try and shift how that happens. In Genesis 2 and verse 5, and every plant of the field before it was in the earth, and every herb of the field before it grew, for the Lord had not caused it to rain upon the earth, and there was not a man to till the ground. So God causes it to rain upon the earth. You see, it's by the Lord's hand. And my hope is that by the end of this lesson tonight, this presentation, that y'all will be on board 100%, that even if these powers that be and the powers that shouldn't be, right, even if they manipulate the weather and the happenings on the face of the earth, our God has the final authority in all things. Hallelujah. All right, forecasting. This word really tripped me up for a minute there because I'm thinking, okay, we call it broadcasting, forecasting, casting spells, right? And forecasting, according to Webster's 1828, is to foresee, to provide against, to scheme, to plan before execution, to adjust, contrive, or appoint beforehand. Forecast, right? So forecasting. And what they're doing is trying to determine the outcome before an event. And isn't that exactly what they're doing, these weather forecasters? Well, this is nothing new. There is nothing new under the sun. And right here we see in Webster's 1828 the word divination. You see, to me, it's one and the same. Perhaps they call them different names or they do things in a little bit different way than the diviners did back in the day. But Webster says the act of divining, a foretelling future events or discovering things secret or obscure by the aid of superior beings, wow, or by other than human means. Well, full stop right there, full stop. Okay, so is it possible that these forecasters and these people out there who are modifying things and coming up with this technology, we've talked about it before, I call it FAT, fallen angel technology. Is it possible that they're indeed in communication, probably in communion too, with these fallen entities? And I think it's an absolute yes, a resounding yes. Going back to the definition, the ancient heathen philosophers divided divination into two kinds. They had natural and artificial. Natural divination was supposed to be effected by a kind of inscription or divine afflatus. Artificial divination was effected by certain rites, experiments, or observations, as by sacrifices, cakes, flowers, wine, observation, entrails, flight of birds, omens, stars, etc. And on the bottom right, this picture here it was basically something that they would use. It was called a piacinza, that's hard to say, liver. And it was like a ceramic guide to a liver. They would pretty much form these structures. And I mean, it's what a Ouija board is to today's man, isn't it? Same thing, just a different name. And, tonight I also wanted to just let y'all know I'm not going to have as much from history that I get to pull in, which made it a lot more difficult. I'm just saying it's much easier when I can pull in historical documents and evidences of old rather than more the modern age. So I hope that you'll stick around and hang out while we go through this because it's still incredibly fascinating. And one of those things that I was able to find is from Cicero. And well, let's talk about modification first. So modify, another big word that we'll be talking about tonight. Webster's 1828 says here to change the form or external qualities of a thing, to shape, to give a new form of being to, as to modify matter, light, or sound, to vary, to give a new form to anything. That is to modify the of a contract, the terms of a contract. Okay, so we're changing something. And the left pictures, the bottom left is picture a harp. And you'll see those stations, the substations, and the picture to the right of that is very near to where they were having, there's about 3 different station sites that they turn these machines on at these low and high frequencies. And the top picture, another anomaly that was happening during some of these testings that they were doing. Okay, Revelation 11:3 through 6. It says, "And I will give power unto my 2 witnesses, and they shall prophesy 1,260 days, clothed in sackcloth. These are the 2 olive trees, and the 2 candlesticks standing before the God of the earth. And if any man will hurt them, fire proceedeth out of their mouth, and devoureth their enemies. And if any man will hurt them, he must in this manner be killed. These have power to shut heaven, that it rain not in the days of their prophecy, and have power over waters, to turn them to blood, and to smite the earth with all plagues as often as they will." What was standing out to me while I was doing this is that these guys, they will have the ability to stop the rain. So whether or not these entities, these 3-letter agencies or more, whether or not they have figured out means to manipulate the weather, change it, create storms, create chaos, these witnesses will so overrule that. Okay, divination of the ancients. Now, this is what I was trying to get to just a minute ago. I was kind of jumped ahead there, but Cicero wrote a couple of different books. He wrote, I believe, 2 volumes of this. It's on the upper right corner there, and it was called De Divinione, and it was about divination. And Quintus was his brother, and Quintus spoke with him, and this was published in this book, and this is what is said. It says, "Divination, which is the foreseeing and foretelling of events considered as happening by chance," right? And 44 BC, Cicero said, "There is an ancient belief handed down to us, even from mythical times, and firmly established by the general agreement of the Roman people and of all nations, that divination of some kind exists among men. This the Greeks they have a special name for, and it is the foresight and knowledge of future events. A really splendid and helpful thing it is," says Cicero, "if only such a faculty exist, since by its means men may approach very near to the power of gods, little g. Now, I am aware of no people, however refined and learned, or however savage and ignorant, which does not think that signs are given of future events, and that certain persons can recognize those signs and foretell events before they occur." Now, I'm going to pause here because I want to read out of Matthew chapter 16, the words of Jesus. All right, so in Matthew chapter 16, and I don't have a slide for it, y'all. Forgive me for that. It kind of came to me after the fact. So Matthew chapter 16, it says, and we'll be in verses, I'm going to look at verses 2 through 4. "He answered and said unto them, When it is evening, ye say, It will be fair weather, for the sky is red. And in the morning, It will be foul weather today, for the sky is red and lowering. O ye hypocrites, ye can discern the face of the sky, but can ye not discern the signs of the times? A wicked and adulterous generation seeketh after a sign, and there shall no sign be given unto it, but the sign of the prophet Jonas." And, that perplexed me for a while when I would read it. And I think it's correct. I'll have to double check this. I believe the sign of Jonas is repent. That's the sign. Here's your sign. Have you heard a person crying in the wilderness today or lately saying, repent? That's your sign. You see, we don't need to look for signs. And the Lord wasn't telling us to go and search out signs in that verse, in that passage. He was saying, a wicked and adulterous generation seeketh after a sign, right? And we don't need to be doing that. He goes on to say, well, I'll go back a little bit. He said, which does not think that signs are given of future events, and that certain persons can recognize those signs and foretell events before they occur. This again is Cicero from 44 BC. First of all, to seek authority from the distant sources. Okay, the Assyrians, on account of the vast plains inhabited by them, and because of the open and unobstructed view of the heavens presented to them on every side, took observations of the paths and movements of the stars, and having made note of them, transmitted to posterity what significance they had for each person. And in that same nation, the Chaldeans, a name which they derived not from their art, but their race, have, it is thought, by means of long continued observation of the constellations, perfected a science which enables them to foretell what any man's lot will be and for what fate he was born. See, I love that because it really explains even more in the Word of God, right? When we're told that they cast lots. This was a type of divination, and I didn't really realize that. So the same art, he calls it an art, I don't. The same art is believed to have been acquired also by the Egyptians through a remote past extending over almost countless ages. Moreover, the Sicilians, Pisidians, and their neighbors, the Pamphylians, nations which I once governed, think that the future is declared by the songs and flights of birds, and they regard them as most infallible signs. The Bara, too, the art of the diviner, is a monumental ancient Mesopotamian compendium of the science of ecstasy or sacrificial omens. And there were cuneiform tablets in the Neo-Assyrian Babylonian period of time. And again, they recount, these sacrificial prayers and rituals and ceremonies and organ models, which is what these pictures over here, I believe I have one coming up. You see here in the upper right, that was a cast that they would make. They would make these imprints or, just strange models of the liver. That was the main part of the body that they would do their divining on, if you will. And I want to take a look to the upper left there. That would have been one of the diviner's baskets or the plate that they would have carried. And that liver model is from Mari, M-A-R-I. These are old Babylonian times. We're talking ancient practices, ancient worship. The picture before, let's go back one slide. The middle picture, this was pretty awesome. That is a Babylonian, it's thought to be a Babylonian tablet from 567 BC. And this tablet contains possibly the oldest written information for the aurora borealis. So they talk about these lights that they would see. And just for a side note, I'm going to throw this in right here, what Cicero says, because I thought it was pretty fantastic. He said, I have always been of the opinion that unpopularity earned by doing what is right is not unpopularity at all, but glory. I thought that was pretty cool. Anyway, moving on. So let's look at Ezekiel 21:21. And it says here, for the king of Babylon stood at the parting of the way, at the head of the two ways, to use divination. He made his arrows bright. He consulted with images. He looked in the liver. I never knew why they would look at the liver, and now I understand. This was part of their ancient act. This is one of those ceremonial, they would have their sacrifices and their ritualistic, ceremonies, and they would try and read the liver. Now, fallen angels had something to do with this. They had to. It's the little birdie carrying whispers on the wind. Be careful what you say, right? Because he'll take it back and tell kings a matter. That's what they were doing here. 2 Kings 17:17. And they caused their sons and their daughters to pass through the fire, and used divination and enchantments, and sold themselves to do evil in the sight of the Lord, to provoke him to anger. Provoking God to anger. You see, that's what these people are doing. if we would want to get down to the brass tacks of the matter, these folks want to stir up God to wrath. They want Armageddon. They want the final battle because these people truly believe that they're going to win. But, well, we know how the story ends, don't we? Not so well for them. In Acts 16:16, the scripture says, "And it came to pass, as we went to prayer, a certain damsel possessed with a spirit of divination met us, which brought her masters much gain by soothsaying. The same followed Paul and us, and cried, saying, These men are the servants of the Most High God, which shew unto us the way of salvation. And this did she many days. But Paul, being grieved, turned, and said to the spirit, I command thee, in the name of Jesus Christ, to come out of her. And he came out that same hour." You see, we're dealing with spirits. And you cannot live in this flesh and blood, flesh and bone world and think that it is just that. We have spiritual entities at work, first heaven, second heaven, third heaven. We're fighting a war, and this war is supernatural. This war is spiritual. And in this book of the book of Acts, chapter 16, it goes on, and I'm going to continue reading here. So this, after Paul commanded this spirit to come out of her, in the same hour it came out. In verse 19, "And when her masters saw that the hope of their gains was gone, they caught Paul and Silas and drew them into the marketplace unto the rulers, and brought them into the magistrates, saying, These men, being Jews, do exceedingly trouble our city." You see, the Romans were huge on divination. Like Cicero and some of the other philosophers were actually kind of different than the majority of the Romans at that time. The majority of the Roman people, they were all about using divination, okay? And other type. Now, sorcery was strictly forbidden, but divination they considered to be different. They're saying, "These men, being Jews, do exceedingly trouble our city and teach customs which are not lawful for us to receive, neither to observe, being Romans." They didn't like the word of God. And they didn't like that their little money, ka-ching, was gone. "And the multitude rose up together against them. And the magistrates rent their clothes and commanded to beat them. And when they had laid many stripes upon them, they cast them into prison, charging the jailer to keep them safely, who, having received such a charge, thrust them into the inner prison and made their feet fast in the stocks. And at midnight Paul and Silas prayed while in prison. They prayed and sang praises unto God. And the prisoners heard them. And suddenly there was a great earthquake. And so the foundations of the prison were shaken, and immediately all the doors were open, and everyone's bands were loosed." You see, the enemy is a copycat, and all he can do is try and copy what is already and only of the Lord, right? So I think that that's just amazing. We know that the Lord is still in control, no matter what's going on, no matter what prisons they try and throw us into, right? Matthew 5:45 says, "That ye may be the children of your Father which is in heaven, for he maketh his sun to rise on the evil and on the good, and sendeth rain on the just and on the unjust." The Lord makes that decision, y'all. He makes that decision. Job 1:16. And here it says, this is when, so the enemy, Satan, had gone before the Lord. And the Lord asked him, "Have you considered my servant, Job? There's none like him. He's upright. He's a righteous man." And Satan was given the ability, by God's permission, to afflict Job, right? And what I find fascinating is that even though all of this occurs, it was still by the permitted allowance of the Most High God. While he was, Job 1:16, while he was yet speaking, there came also another, and said, "The fire of God is fallen from heaven, and hath burned up the sheep and the servants, and consumed them, and I only am escaped alone to tell thee. So I do believe that that was a lightning event that took place there in Job. And, you know, there are powers of the air, and Satan does have some authority while here on the earth. Uh, he's bound right now, but that means he is still able to go to and fro. He can't have full access. He doesn't get to enter in to somebody yet, not until he's cast back into the earth, right? But there are powers that are given to these spiritual wickedness in heavenly places and high places. Job 37:9. Now we're going to talk about winds a little bit. Y'all, I actually did a lesson, a study. It's entitled The Four Winds. And, you know, this is kind of similar, but not. Job 37:9. Out of the south cometh the whirlwind, and cold out of the north. And in Hosea 13:15, though he be fruitful among his brethren, an east wind shall come. The wind of the Lord shall come up from the wilderness, and his spring shall become dry, and his fountain shall be dried up, and he shall spoil the treasures of all pleasant vessels. So when I'm looking at this, I see several things. Now the maps, we see the northeast trades, southeast trades. We've got the winds and their specified ordered direction. And even at the ancient maps over on the far right, we know that these are in place by the Lord. We've got north winds, we've got south winds. Okay, so if there is something that is moving contrary to that, which we see a lot of these days, then I think it would be pretty easy for us to discern, just linking it by the word of God, what's from him and what is from that old deceiver, what's from the copycat, right? So cloud seeding. Now, many people over the years, until they started coming out with declassifying documents, would call us a conspiracy theorists or whatever they want to say if we believe in cloud seeding. And for anyone who doesn't know, I am not claiming to be an expert in any of the subjects that I'm going to present tonight. I don't have all the knowledge or all the answers. I'm sure some of y'all have been studying this out far longer than what I even, when I began to even think about it. So what I'm presenting is information that it may be more entry level for some people, but to me, it's still insightful and interesting. And you're going to see some things by the end too that hopefully will make you just wonder what in the world is this all about. So cloud seeding, they'll say conspiracy theory, but now because of declassified documents and a lot of military folks who have come forward and talked about it, we know that cloud seeding has been a thing, is a thing, has been a thing for quite some time. In fact, we can go back to, I believe it was 1900, 1901, 1902. There was a gentleman named Charlie Hatfield, otherwise known as Charles Hatfield, and he was out in California. This guy liked to play with chemicals, and so he would climb up in these towers that he would make. He'd make these open basin, open air towers, and he'd mix chemicals up. And he was well known in like Alaska, Texas, Idaho, Oregon for these weather creations. He liked to call it, I think it was something like moisture accelerators. He wanted to be known as a moisture accelerator. People wanted to call him the rainmaker. And so San Diego was having a really hard time filling up one of their dams. And they went to him and they asked if he could fill up their dam. To fill it up would have taken 10 billion gallons of water. It was only like a third of the way full. And I think it in full, it held 15 billion gallons of water. And he took it. He said for $10,000, mind you, this is like 1904 or 1902. He said for that much money, he would fill their dam. And so he went up there, they agreed to pay, and he began to fill the dam. Now, see, people only paid after he made it rain. And it began to pour. And for like 3 days, January, I think the 14th, I think it started to rain, and it poured the 15th, and it rained pretty much up until the 18th. And it was starting to flood some areas. but the dam that he was commissioned to fill up, it wasn't yet full. So he continued to mix his chemicals even after the rain stopped for about a week's time. And this guy, he made it rain a lot. So and I believe it was January 24th and January 25th and 26th, it began to rain so heavy that some areas upstream got 29 inches of rain in a day's time. Well, all of this rain, it was 400 plus cubic square miles, cubic meters of water, and all of this just begins to rush down in the valley. And it was the largest flood ever in the San Diego area. He did fill Marina Dam out there, but the Otay Dam ended up collapsing. And this collapse caused a 20-foot wall of water moving at 8 miles per hour to come rushing down. It's one of the top 5 most deadliest dam failures in U.S. history. So did he make it rain? Yeah, I think he did. Well, he went to collect. I mean, they were devastated. The whole area was devastated. Railroads washed out, bridges washed out, many people killed. And he realized how much damage had been done. And the city of, San Diego said, we're not going to pay you. And he's like, I filled it up. And they said, if you take responsibility, if you say that you're the one who did this, who made it rain and made it flood, then we'll pay you the money. Well, he had a lawyer, and he knew if he took responsibility that everybody and their dog would be suing him for this huge, massive flood. And so he declined. He was like, no, not doing it. And so he never got paid. But he did fill their dam and caused massive chaotic flooding. And this was the early 1900s. But see, today they'll try and say that they've only been doing this since like the late 40s, 50s. That's what they'll try and tell you. And this is one of the substances that's used. It's silver iodide, and it produces crystals and basically makes it so that the air gets heavier in the upper atmosphere, and so that these particles will fall down to the earth as rain. That's what it actually does. And silver iodide has 2 ways in which they can disperse it. Now, mind you, they're still doing this today. Okay, silver iodide can either be from ground level, and that's what they call dynamic cloud seeding, or it can be done from the air, and that's known as static cloud seeding. Some of these pictures you see, okay, the bottom right, for instance, that was a cloud seeding plane, and look at the tornado just to its rear. Yeah, and these are canisters on the aircraft, which we're going to be able to hear a little bit more and see a little bit more of as the lesson goes on, and especially when we talk with Captain Mac. But I just really want you guys to see those pictures. This is how they disperse silver iodide into the air, cloud seeding. Or if they're on the ground, they have these kind of like what Charlie Hatfield did back in the 1900s, right? Like 1902, 1900s, not like 1955 or something. So we're told chemtrails are a conspiracy theory. And this is a wiki article. Yeah, I went to wiki. I know I shouldn't probably, but I did. And they say it's the erroneous belief that long-lasting condensation trails are chemtrails consisting of chemical or biological agents left in the sky by high-flying aircraft. Yep. Sprayed for nefarious purposes undisclosed to the general public. And they say believers say normal chemtrails dissipate quickly. Contrails that linger must contain additional substances. Well, yeah, because everything that you look at, everything that you read about a contrail is scientifically proven to dissipate. I mean, maybe it'll last for, 30 seconds or even a minute, but to last an entire day, when we go outside and we see these crisscross applesauce patterns in the sky, checkerboards in the sky, and no, I wasn't throwing up any gang signs there. But when you see these things in the sky that are lingering for 5 hours, 6 hours, 7 hours, there is no way that is just made from a natural jet engine. It's just mind-boggling that they try and get us to believe that. So before we hear Captain Mac, before we interview him, let's talk about the the seeding that's still going on even today. All right, so we've got a few articles that I was able to pull. There's so many more, y'all, so I just chose a handful. The upper left is from November 1st, 2018, and it says, Evaluation of the Wyoming Weather Modification Pilot Project. That's a mouthful. Using two approaches, traditional statistics and ensemble modeling. So they're doing it up in Wyoming, 2018. We've got Billy Goats here. That was January 11th, 2021. Venture aims to spray dust, and that's going to be important as we go along in the presentation. Venture aims to spray dust into the atmosphere to block the sun. What could go wrong, says Forbes magazine. Well, we could all answer a million things that could go wrong, right? Upper right, Russia operation. It's a secret Russia operation to save Moscow from Chernobyl disaster of 1986. So expert explains how Russia used cloud seeding. And they did. And they were trying to clear the air. We've got the bottom left, Nazis, the Nazis' secret technology. They really did have a lot of understanding of this fallen angel technology. And it's not just them, not just the Germans, not just the Russians, the Americans, the everybody people all over this flat earth, who are in contact with spiritual wickedness. They have access to these things. Dubai, here we go, July 21st, 2021, Dubai making its own rain to beat 120-degree heat. And then bottom right, China deploys rain seeding drones to end drought. So you see, my friends, this is ongoing. This isn't something that was only done for a handful of minutes, back then for a little bit of time. This has been going on for a long time and a lot longer than what they want us to believe. All right, so I am so excited that I get to introduce Captain Mac. This is from one of our own, right? So hope you guys will enjoy this video. It's about 14-minute interview, and I'll be back with you guys in just a minute.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Captain Mac, and I am being interviewed by our sister, Tracy. It's good to see you, Tracy. What's happening this evening?
It's great to see you too, Captain Mac. Well, I'm just excited to get to talk to you because I'll tell you what, trying to find research on this topic has been just amazing. Thank you so much for coming on.
Well, I'm really glad to be here. Basically, I am a retired corporate jet pilot, and I was flying airplanes for about 50 years. I've accumulated over 10,000 hours of flying time and on all different types of aircraft. And I was in the military in 1965 through 1969. In 1967, after I left Edwards Air Force Base, the Flight Test Center, I transitioned over to the 54th Weather Squadron out of Guam, beautiful island of Guam. And while I was there, we did some temporary assignments into Southeast Asia. And we were at Udorn, Thailand, where we operated C-130 aircraft. And we basically seeded the clouds, Thailand as well as in Vietnam during the Vietnam War. We had, like I said, two C-130 airplanes, and they flew 3 missions a day. And they were using the silver iodide mounted on racks on the side of the C-130s. And they'd go out in the morning at 6 o'clock, go out and do their thing, seeding the clouds. That plane would come back at about noon, and then the second airplane would launch itself, and it would go out and continue the process. And then it would come back around 6 in the evening, and then we had to turn the first airplane around and launched it again. And it would go out and kind of observe and see what the day's events were. And we did this 7 days a week for forever, it seemed like. But that was an operation that was called Popeye. And I don't know how they came up with that. But Popeye had a real good record of seeing the clouds. We were basically doing it to slow down the transportation of stuff, supplies and so forth with the Vietnamese on the Ho Chi Minh Trail. So that there, and we were we did like 600 missions without a late or an abort, and that was our main function over in Thailand. And then we would go back to Guam and spend some time there. In Guam, the 54th Weather Squadron was out looking. They were basically the hurricane watchers. They'd go out and find the hurricanes and fly through them and give us information on that kind of those things that were happening.
Now, real quick, Captain Mac, did they ever tell you that they were going out and doing things to the hurricanes, like modifying them? For instance, I know there's some reports, and I believe I've already gone over some of it in the presentation, but you know, there are reports that in the, I want to say it was the late 50s or 60s, there was a hurricane off the Atlantic coast that they were spraying and they managed to change the direction of it. Did you hear stories of any of that?
No, I can't say I really have. However, I'm aware of the fact that there is a weather modification program that the government put together. That's called HARP.
Right.
And they're supposed to be able to modify and change the weather patterns, make it rain, make it snow, anything they want. I'm understanding too also that the Chinese have a program along the same lines that they could probably affect our weather if they really wanted to.
Well, you say this was back in the 60s that y'all were out there seeding and making the Ho Chi Minh Trail a swampland, basically, to slow down their operations, right? So
That's correct, yes.
I wonder how much further we've gotten today. Yeah, it's just crazy to me. And when you were out there flying all of these missions, was there anything that stood out to you? Do you recall anything standing out in particular about this seeding that you were doing? Or was it at that point you're doing your job? I mean, that's what you were ordered to do.
That's basically it. Yeah, it was. We weren't really concerned too much with. Our concern was to win the war, and
Right.
that's what we were doing. We were hoping that we were doing something that was going to help end the thing, but obviously it went on for a few more years after I left Southeast Asia. Well, I was going to say after I came back to the United States, I got involved with aviation more heavily as a corporate pilot. And, we've spent a lot of hours in the air. I've spent over 10,000 hours in the air. 5,000 hours was probably in the corporate jet. So we spent a lot of time at high altitudes. And we've noticed a change over the years from the contrails as opposed to the chemtrails. The contrails are really a function of the jet exhaust coming out of the engine that has a lot of moisture in it. And the contrails would be what you see normally following a jet, and they would dissipate after a few minutes, where the chemtrails tend to hang and spread out and really kind of block the sun from getting down into the down to earth.
Right.
And you can certainly notice them more often because there's more like a checkerboard effect when you're watching the chemtrails if you're looking up at them.
Oh, for sure. These different ingredients that they're mixing up there.
Yeah, that's true. I have some documentation that indicate that they've been testing this chemtrails that they're putting up into the atmosphere, and they contain a lot of aluminum, some barium, strontium, arsenic, and some magnesium.
Oh,
Now, I'm not really sure why they want to poison us that way, but that seems to be their case.
I mean, that's the question of the day, right? Like, why in the world are they pouring arsenic? I mean, could it there in my mind, there is no scientific positiveness of spraying arsenic on anybody.
No, it seems to be a bigger plan than what I'm aware of, but it's basically population control, I believe. They're wanting to
Agreed.
they want to cut back on the number of people on the earth, and they seem to be doing a pretty good job of that.
Unfortunately, but yes, definitely. And when we're talking about the weather changes and the things that we see that are different, like compared to you growing up and even me growing up, I was in 70s, 80s, and the sky looks nothing like it did when I was a kid. I remember going outside and seeing just beautiful puffy, I used to call them puffy clouds. They were puffy white, brilliant white with the shining silver edges and scattered. They'd be scattered. I never remember as a kid having this layer, this almost film over the atmosphere. And have you noticed a change in that as well over the time that you've been not only on the earth but flying as well?
Oh, definitely, yeah. It's changed quite a bit over the years. The clear blue skies, the times that you would take off and fly and go up high. Some days are really nice, and other days were just it was a milky looking cloud layer that you were flying in. And yeah, it has changed a lot over the years. What we're seeing nowadays with the chemtrails and the milky looking skies.
Right.
That's been more recently in the last, I'd say 20 years or so.
So were there other, I know that you were talking at one point about when you're up there at 45,000 feet, and what does it look like? I mean, I know that we're not really going down that rabbit hole necessarily tonight, but come on, what does it look like?
Well, um, I've been to 45,000 feet, and I'll tell you what, it's flat. The earth is flat. And I had seen a report with Gary Sinise. He's an actor, and he had an opportunity to go up in a U-2 spy plane, and they went up to like 70,000 feet, and they had some beautiful pictures of him looking out over the horizon, and it was flat. There's no doubt about it. The good Lord built this terrarium, and it's a self-sustaining place that we can all live in. And I don't understand why these people are wanting to try and change that, to mess it all up for us.
Well, and I think it goes right back to the fact that no matter what they do, and I'm hoping that during this presentation so far, I've been able to show that God Almighty has the final say, the final authority in everything. And even when it comes to weather modification, HARP, CERN, all of these agencies, the three letter and more, you know, nothing escapes his notice. And I really think that this is a point of judgment. This is a time when the Lord's judgment, and he's using it, I believe, through these programs, through these facilities and secret, agencies that are doing this they're doing it on the whole world. And I mean, I don't think there's any way else you can explain it. This is the judgment of God.
You're absolutely correct. And yeah, when we sit, we look and see what's happening around the world. There's earthquakes, there's famine, there's war, and rumors of wars. There's just, there's never been, there's always been people that say that it was the end of the world. But I think that we're probably closer now to the return of the Lord than we ever have been. It's not only us, but you're right. It's absolutely everywhere in the world.
So if you noticed, I think we had talked about this a little bit earlier, but the vegetables, the fruits, the weeds, the grass. Okay, my grass won't stop growing. I pray about it. I'm like, please, Lord, make it slow down. But more so in the last couple of years, I see this speeding up process of growth, which when we're talking about these spraying, these chemtrails, just what they're doing to modify things in our earth. It's like they're literally trying to terraform this earth to a more hospitable place, perhaps for mixed entities, for instance. And you see reports all the time of like giant sunflowers, or a vine that should normally only grow to 5 feet is now 25 feet, just absolutely mind boggling growth. Have you noticed any of that on your side of the world?
Absolutely, yeah. I've noticed that not only in the plants, but also in the fruit that you buy at the grocery stores. I've seen some strawberries that are almost the size of my fist, and I don't know how they're doing that, with the exception of gene modification.
Right.
But yeah, there's definitely something going on. Um, you might very well be correct in the terraforming of to bring in another species. Uh, it's very, very likely.
Well, Captain Mac, was there anything else that you wanted to add today?
Not unless you have any other questions.
Well, I've got tons of questions, but that's probably for another program. But thank you so much for coming on and taking time. And it's one thing when we read this in a book, or when you read an article, or hear it, third person from somebody over here that we've never known or met. But it really helps to debunk spiritual sort of mindset when we have somebody like you who firsthand was there, doing the seeding, and very well what they were doing over there, and you saw the effects of it. So, and I think we're not necessarily nationalists anymore. It's not America, but men and women were going to serve their country, and it was for God, for country, for family, right? And it was a legitimate thing from your heart. And that's so far lost now and removed. But when you served, I just want to thank you, because I know the commitment and the sacrifice, and I think it deserves that thank you, and that respect and honor that nobody seems to have anymore. It's crazy how far things have changed.
Yeah, they certainly have, and I appreciate your kind words on that. And there's a lot of people out there that haven't had the recognition, and we like to thank them too. There are a lot of people that have served.
Yes.
Sometimes we've been led astray, but nevertheless, we went and did our job.
All right, Captain Mac. And I know we'll be talking again soon.
All righty. Thank you so much, Tracy, and the blessings to you too.
So, y'all, quite fascinating, isn't it? I love having a perspective of somebody who was flying and they've, been through this, they've seen it firsthand. I love eyewitness accounts of what we're talking about, because it really does solidify everything that we're talking about here tonight. So, Captain Mac, thank you so much again. And I know I already said it on the interview, but I'm thanking you again for being willing to come and discuss it. There's a lot of flack I know that comes from living that life. If people knew the half of all of our private sins, nobody would ever get up and say another thing, would they? But praise God for repentance and the ability to turn from that which is evil and wicked and come to the truth. The Lord is awesome. And, we were talking on there about terraforming. And it's not one of the subjects I'm going to dive into tonight, though I want to. I will have to save that for another time. But I do want to at least touch on nanoparticles, okay, and nanoparticulates. This is something that was probably the most like revealing or thing of revelation, I guess, to me during the study. So let's look at Isaiah. We're going to go to Isaiah because I've never read it with this type of mind regarding nanotechnology. Let's read it. Isaiah 29, 5-6 says, "Moreover, the multitude of thy strangers shall be like small dust, and the multitude of the terrible ones shall be as chaff that passeth away. Yea, it shall be at an instant, suddenly. Thou shalt be visited of the Lord of hosts with thunder, and with earthquake, and great noise, with storm and tempest and the flame of devouring fire. Now, little word study here. The word small is 1851 in the Hebrew, and it is fine, minute, dust, particle, and that's in Jusinius. It's a particle, like nanoparticles. Dust is number 80. In the concordance, it is small, fine, easily scattered by the wind. Easily scattered by the wind. And the word chaff is 4671. It means blown away by wind. So do we have reason to believe that there is nanoparticle technology spoken of in Scripture? I think we do. And I think that that's pretty clear in Isaiah 29, 5 and 6. And I'd never really seen that before. And we're going to see it in other places too. You know, one of the main things that they say is problematic is soot. And soot has played a role in this weather geoengineering for a long time, a lot longer than they say, of course. And, you know, it's called horrible things. It's they say it is one of the world's biggest contributors to climate change. But did y'all know that that is one of the main sources that they used when they were first going out seeding? And it melts. Soot has the ability to melt permafrost. It has the ability to melt ice. You see? And what soot does they are considered nanoparticulates once they're broken down fine enough. And over time, this layer that's coating, for instance, the ice caps that they're so worried about our human, consumption melting, it will melt down one layer after another. It just keeps melting the layer upon layer down. So all this talk about we're causing this warming to take place, no. We're causing the melting to take place. No, absolute lies. What's causing it is this soot that they put down eons ago, maybe not eons ago. They put it down in the 40s, in the 50s, even in the 60s. And they don't have to keep doing it. It's one of those cloud seeding tricks, one of those divination tools, one of those sorceries, sorcerer, I call them, witch doctors, which you'll see later on too. But it's one of those tools that they use, and they only have to put it down one time. And then that compound, the soot itself, will stay until that layer that it sits on is melted. And then it goes down and it begins working on the next level. So whose fault is it? I'm just saying. Soot particles, they also absorb solar radiation. So they, in fact, are making it hotter. Not you, not me, not anybody who listens to this later on. I want to take a look here at the next slide. This is a pretty awesome book. It's chock full with information. Stephen Quayle, he is the author of Weather Wars and Unnatural Disasters. I could just read this whole book to y'all because it would be a wealth of information Steve Quayle has compiled here. But I'm going to read from chapter 69 a little bit about this technology. He says here, one of the surprising sections of the weather as a force multiplier, owning the weather in 2025, research paper presented at the Air Force 2025 meeting was the brief passage making mention of employing nanotechnology for weather modification, a use few had considered up until that time. One of the sections laid out the possibility this way. With regard to seeding techniques, improvements in the materials and delivery methods are not only plausible, but likely. Smart materials based on nanotechnology are currently being developed with gigaops computer capability at their core. They could adjust their size to optimal dimensions for a given fog seeding situation and even make adjustments throughout the process. They might also enhance their dispersal qualities by adjusting their buoyancy, by communicating with each other, and by steering themselves within the fog, they will be able to provide immediate and continuous effectiveness feedback by integrating with a larger sensor network, and can also change their temperature and polarity to improve their seeding effects. UAVs, unmanned aerial vehicles, could be used to deliver and distribute these smart materials. See, it sounds like science fiction, Steve Quayle goes on to say, but recent advances make it possible, if not probable. And I say, oh yeah, it's absolutely probable, and most likely being done even now. I mean, we're already in 2023. That paper that the United States Air Force had written and were discussing was for an agenda set forth for by the year 2025. In Deuteronomy 28:24, it says, and this is another one that kind of, in my humble opinion, looks to me like we could be talking about this nanotechnology. The Lord shall make the rain of thy land powder and dust. From heaven shall it come down upon thee until thou be destroyed. And the word powder here is number 80 from the root 79. This is the same word that we just read before. It is to float away as vapor, light particles, as volatile, small dust, powder. This is a different type of dust. It is not just the dust that we're talking that is like thicker. This is a very light. Isaiah 29, verse 13 through 15 says, wherefore the Lord said, for as much as this people draw near me with their mouth, and with their lips do honor me, but have removed their heart far from me, and their fear toward me is taught by the precept of men. Therefore, behold, I will proceed to do a marvelous work among this people, even a marvelous work and a wonder, for the wisdom of their wise men shall perish, and the understanding of their prudent men shall be hid. Woe unto them that seek deep to hide their counsel from the Lord, and their works are in the dark, and they say, who seeth us? And who knoweth us? Isn't that what these people are doing? They're saying, who seeth us? Who knoweth us? And it reminds me of the Johnny Cash song, God's Gonna Cut You Down, right? Just as sure as God made black and white, what's done in the dark will be brought to the light. They can run on for a long time, but sooner or later, he's going to cut them down. Isaiah 29:16 through 19, moving ahead, it says, surely your turning of things upside down. Are they not turning things upside down right now, y'all? This is perfect. Surely your turning of things upside down shall be esteemed as the potter's clay. For shall the work say of him that made it, he made me not? Or shall the thing framed say to him that framed it, he had no understanding? It is not yet a very little while, and Lebanon shall be turned into a fruitful field, and the fruitful field shall be esteemed as a forest. And in that day shall the deaf hear the words of the book, and the eyes of the blind shall see out of obscurity, and out of darkness. The meek also shall increase their joy in the Lord, and the poor among men shall rejoice in the Holy One of Israel. I just love it. There's such hope. And that's part of this message tonight, because it's some heavy stuff. And when we pull back some of these other little things that we're going to get to, it gets kind of heavy. So we just remember what the Lord has told us here. Everything is going to be exposed. Everything will be revealed. You can't hide from the Lord. You may be able to hide for a little bit from man, but ultimately the Lord will expose every wickedness and every evil. The Environmental Modification Convention, NMOD. And I was just joking with my daughter a little bit ago, and I'm like, they have to come up with their little acronyms for everything. So NMOD, Environmental Modification Convention. It was formerly the Convention of the Prohibition of Military and or other hostile use of environmental modification techniques. Oh my word. I get why they came up with a shorter word here, or phrase. It opened for signature on the 18th of May in 1977 in Geneva, Switzerland, no less, and went into effect on the 5th of October 1978. So officially, this convention bans weather warfare, and that's considered the use of weather modification techniques. But get this, it says, for the purposes of inducing damage or destruction. Well, that kind of leaves a loophole, doesn't it? It leaves a nice gap area for people to say, well, it wasn't our intention. You see, there is no accountability. With these charters that they've written and these words that they've put together, there's no accountability. And I believe they did that on purpose. They had to make these charters in order to appease the people of the earth. They had to write these agreements among countries to ban things in order to make people who were actually looking into this think that there was something being done. But the truth is, there are just loophole after loophole in how they get around that. Here is a Express Mail report. They said in one of their articles, will the Large Hadron Collider destroy Earth? CERN admits experiments could create black holes. And we'll get to the bottom picture in just a minute here. But it's just unbelievable. They're sitting here. That's another thing with this location. So that the environmental modification, blah, blah, their NMOD, their NMOD group. They did this at UNESCO. And we've talked, I know that we did the Hollow Earth discussions. We had a couple of those on here. We've talked about how UNESCO is coming in at every turn to every area where there is, monoliths found, giants found, cave systems found. They're coming in and claiming it. They're claiming it. And there's a lot to this, y'all. There's a reason why they signed this thing in Geneva. There's a reason why UNESCO is tied to it. And I don't know all the reasons, but it's interesting that in their little statement there, they said that they wouldn't induce damage or destruction. They said to prevent the use of weather weaponry for inducing damage or destruction. And yet, CERN's got their little little G god of destruction out there in front of their building, don't they? Here's another bill that was passed, H.R. 2995, 109th Congress, back in 2005, Weather Modification Research and Technology Transfer Authorization Act of 2005. It establishes in the Department of Commerce the Weather Modification Advisory and Research Board to promote and fund, yes, promote and fund research and development, studies and investigations with respect to improved forecast and decision-making technologies for weather modification operations. Okay, so in other words, those other agreements that were made, those other articles that were written, their little, hoo-has that they had over there in Geneva, they probably went skiing and drinking coffee and who knows what else and had little rituals or something over there because it didn't do anything. And we saw that earlier. We saw that with all the modification that they're doing. Do you think it stops there? Do we think that it's going to stop with seeding clouds? These people have got the lie in their ear, guaranteed. They've got the earworm of the lie of the devil in the garden. You can be as the gods. And they really think it. These guys are no holds bars. Here's a guy who, basically he did. He pioneered the weather modification systems. Now Tesla, the upper left corner there, that's just a recreation, obviously, but he made the very first wireless system. And that was a wireless system that had like 200 electric lights without any wiring from 25 miles away. He lit them from 25 miles away. And he also made man-made lightning bolts back in his day, right? He came up with scalar waves. They're also called Tesla waves, longitudinal waves. And now the thing about this is that if we understand the biblical cosmology of this earth, and it's really important that we do, then we'll understand that those waves that are coming across are going to be more impactful and more powerful and reach to every corner of this earth, you see. And that's why they found that these Tesla waves, or the longitude waves, are they can penetrate even Faraday cages, they found. That's just amazing. And a transmitter can be placed in a thick metal box even, and a receiver outside the box still will receive this scalar or Tesla wave. So scalar waves they can pass from one side to another without losing strength. They can go from one end of the earth to the other and not lose strength. And Tesla showed that in that experiment that he did with the 200 lights. They try and say that it travels faster than the speed of light. Personally, I mean, I guess they can measure things when they turn on a light switch or something to try and figure out the speed of light, but they call it superluminal. I don't know that I totally buy into that, but it's what they say. It's what the experts say. So scalar waves are not electromagnetic, but they're composed of what's called zero energy point. And zero point energy, but 0 point energy, they can be used as a power source. So these waves, they're used for communication, they're used for energy, they can be used other applications as well, weaponry, right? They basically have the fastest, most connected, and they can broadcast and magnify the most power, which is amazing because this has been known about back from Tesla's days. How much more do they know today? You see? And interesting subnote here, when Tesla died, his records were seized. The US government actually took ownership over all of his notes. And some of those notes were never seen again. I know that they've got them, but they never resurfaced. Trump's uncle was a researcher up there, and he was given, so apparently they trusted him, Donald Trump's uncle, they trusted him enough to give him these books, these notebooks, because they wanted to see if anything could be taken and used from it. And it said that, he gave those notes then later to Donald Trump. So I don't know how true that is, but it's something to, think about anyway. It's kind of interesting. All right, y'all. So those kind of waves could go through the earth in every direction. Tesla's intention was to confirm this idea of the resonance of the earth. He expected that they would be, again, we're talking about frequencies. He expected it would be like 6, 18, and 30 hertz. So let's move on, because that's where a lot of this technology came from. And if you guys listened to me before, Nikola Tesla learned, from his own mouth, he said that he would leave a pen and notepad on his end table at night, every night. And people would ask, where are your ideas coming from? He said every night he'd leave a pen and notepad. And when he woke up in the morning, there would be directions written. And he would just follow the directions. So you tell me that there wasn't some fallen entity helping. I think absolutely. Absolutely. We're going to look at HARP and CERN and some other agents. Work on the HARP facility began in 1993. And that's the picture in the middle. And also the upper right corner there. That's going to be your HARP. The bottom left, though, is another location. There's about 3 or 4. Now there's way more, but at the time that I was looking into, it was about 3. The bottom left was in Broome, Australia, this location. And it was interesting because on that date there, which would have been, I believe, the 22nd of January, 2010, when this thing was fired up, it created that very bizarre shape. Look at that. Look at the effect. That's above that HARP place over there in Australia. Strange, isn't it? Some more pictures. I said a picture is worth 1,000 words because it really is. It really is. We've got extremely low frequency waves. That's, HARP is supposed to be ELF waves, and they're more naturally occurring, but they can also be produced artificially. And the Navy's Project Sanguine for submarine communication did this and effectively did this. ELF waves are not normally noticed by the unaided senses, but their effect upon the human body has been connected to both physiological disorders and emotional distortion. Infrared sound vibrations up to 20 hertz can subliminally influence brain activity, which can align itself to delta, theta, alpha, or beta. It can also be used, those kind of, alpha, beta, the wave patterns, which can make an audience, basically, it could incline somebody from everything from alertness, so making some folks or a large group of people, it can make them more alert, or it could make them passive. So you see these effects from these ELF or extremely low frequency waves that they're putting out, it has an effect on people. It absolutely has the ability to be a weapon and certainly engineered, right? Infrared sound can also be used tactically. So an ELF wave, again, we're thinking about Tesla waves. Let's think about these things going across the earth, right? They can endure for great distances. It can be used with media broadcasts as well. And, there's a written document out there called The Cycles of Heaven. And there's information about the U.S.'s plans to develop a new weapon. And this is from the Russian parliament. They have concerns about U.S. plans to develop a new weapon. They stated, so Moscow, in this interfax, stated, the Russian State Department Duma has expressed concern. This was August 8th, 2002. August 8th, 2002. The Russian State Duma says this. The Duma expressed a concern about the United States program to develop a qualitatively new type of weapon. Under the high frequency, think about how deceptive this is. They call it the high frequency active auroral research program. That's what HARP stands for. That's a really long name, and it's really deceiving because it would make one think, if I was just an average Joe and I'm listening, sorry Joe, I don't mean you any disrespect if your name's Joe, but to the average Timmy Two Socks, under the high frequency active auroral research program, you would think it's just high frequencies that they're running. Not the case. This Russian Duma goes on to say, the U.S. is creating new integral geophysical weapons that may influence the near-Earth medium with high-frequency radio waves. The State Duma said in an appeal circulated on Thursday. The significance of this qualitative leap could be compared to the transition from cold steel to firearms or from conventional weapons to nuclear weapons. And it becomes a problem, doesn't it? He goes on, there's several good things that he said in this article, but in this paper, he said the second one, the committees reported that the U.S. is planning to test 3 facilities of this kind. So there were 3 initially. One of them is located in the military testing ground in Alaska, and its full-scale tests are to begin in early 2003, which it did. The second one is in Greenland, and the third one in Norway. When these facilities are launched into space from Norway, Alaska, and Greenland, a close contour will be created with a truly fantastic integral potential for influencing the near-Earth medium. The U.S. plans to carry out large-scale scientific experiments under the HARP program and not controlled by he calls it the global, not controlled by the global community, will create weapons capable of breaking radio communication lines and equipment installed on ships and rockets, provoke serious accidents in electricity networks and in oil and gas pipelines, and have a negative impact on the mental health. Listen to this, highlight this, will have a negative impact on the mental health of people populating entire regions. Is this a problem? Should we be concerned, as it were? Yeah, we should. You see, now here's the thing to think about. This is why I said again, biblical cosmology is so important, okay? We live on a flat, stationary, non-rotating, beautiful, unique earth that God himself put here. Okay. Above us is a firmament. Above us is the dome, right? Above us is this enclosing that the Lord has done. The stars are fixed in the firmament. All right. So here's what you got to consider. And I've thought about this a lot since doing this research. Okay. If these high frequency waves, so high frequency waves are going up, low frequency waves, the Tesla waves, they're scattering out. If something goes up and it hits something, what happens, right? It has to be cast back down. How much could they direct this? I mean, they're directing it now, no doubt about it. But it's telling. I look at places around the earth. I look at some areas that seem like they've got some, craziness going on in their communities, more so than others. Could it be intentional? And the answer is again, resounding yes. Yes. Look at those clouds. Just what in the world? And I know that they'll try and say, oh, that's a lenticular cloud and that's a mammatus or whatever they'll call it by their scientific names. I didn't see any of that stuff growing up when I was a kid. How about y'all? I did not see any of that stuff when I was a child. All right. I want to play another short video for y'all. And this is going to be an explosion that was taken. This kind of goes hand in hand. There's no sound on this video, and I can't get on and talk over it. I wish I could, but I'll talk afterward. It's very short. But this video is the Tonga volcano eruption. And what you're going to see is a pulse on the right of the screen, followed by the explosion of the explosion of Tonga, right, in Tonga on the left. And you're going to see an arc of clouds that's got a very clear arch to it. And I see what looks like an electrical charge go off just underneath the arch of the clouds. So y'all take a look at this. All right, y'all. And sorry, no, that video, unfortunately, the music that was playing over it was pretty terrible. And so I did not want to put that on. And I could not figure out a way for me to be able to talk over that. But if you saw it on there, and you'll see it at the very end, the end video that I put on here for the credits, if you will, whatever you want to call it, the end screen, you can see that video clearly where I'm trying to show y'all. And to me, it looks like there was definitely an electrical charge that was sent out. I mean, you've got the rings that show up, those, those waves, right, beforehand. And why is it all the way over here just before it gets ignited over here? And what is that arc, that charge? And I think that, this stuff is intentional. These people who are doing this too, they know. They know when it's going to happen. They know where it's going to happen. They know where they're directing these weapons. You notice that a lot of people moved overseas, a lot of wealthy, rub and shoulder kind of people. They've got underground bunkers. They've got yachts. Anybody know somebody who may have just had a huge, massive yacht custom built? They're not, I guess, in the dark, if you will, as far as what the happenings are. And they know when they need to flee. The thing is, they're not going to be able to flee from the wrath of God. They will not. I don't care what underground bunker they've built. I don't care what yacht they've had built for themselves. They will not be able to escape the wrath of God. And it'll find them. And they will be crying out to the rocks to fall on them. You see, God knows. He knows. He sees it all. A few more for good measure, I said, but again, and they do. They'll say that these are, to me, the bottom center. They call these gravity waves. I think these are Tesla waves, y'all. I think that's why we see them like that. It is as though they're sending impulses because they are, and this is what it ends up looking like. Hole punch clouds too, right? You've got those hole punch clouds in the upper left, in the middle. This is scientifically proven to be caused by things that these people are doing. In Sweden, in Grimton, Sweden, there is a frequency at the location, the geophysical warfare, terrorism, weapons of mass destruction. This was Secretary of Defense William Cohen. And at this location in Sweden, it says that, get this, it has the only workable machine transmitter in the world. So this location in Sweden that puts out 17,200 hertz of frequency, it's the only workable transmitter in the world, and is classified as a United World Heritage Site. It's UNESCO? Get out. So UNESCO has classified a high frequency place. Now, why would they do that? Control. They want to do it so that they have all authority, you see. Unbelievable. It was built in 1922 to 1924, and it is designed for frequencies around 40 hertz, they say. The radiating element is an aerial wire hung on 6 127-meter high poles, right, that are grounded. But they have 6 of them. And what's crazy, too, this next one at Jim Creek, Washington, that's here in the US of A. Frequency, 24,800 hertz at 1,200 kilowatts. This thing, oh my gosh, it says the primary mission of this radio site is to provide VLF radio transmitting capabilities for the Pacific submarine fleet. It was established in the 50s, and it is one of the most powerful transmitters in the world. Located near Arlington, Washington, in the foothills of the Cascades on the north of Seattle. Anybody see some crazy stuff happening in like the Seattle area as of late? Has 5,000 acres that it sits on. 5,000 forested acres that this site sits on. So if everything we've been told from scientists, like the New Scientist magazine of 1976 that said, this is what they said, but perhaps the most exotic form of geophysical warfare concerns tampering with the electrical behavior of the ionosphere. Techniques for disturbing radio communication by punching holes in the ionosphere with nuclear explosions have been long discussed. Okay, so what if they're punching holes in it with these energy waves, with these frequencies, with these transmissions, which they are, I'm wholly convinced. So too have proposals for opening up lethal windows in the ionosphere to let in the short wavelength ultraviolet radiation, which is known to damage biological systems, causing skin cancers in man and damage to crops. What is new is the suggestion that the natural wave guide between the ionosphere and the Earth could be used to propagate very low frequency radiation through it in such a way as to affect the electrical behavior of individuals' own brain activity. So in 1976, scientists, maybe some of them were still actually, scientists. Maybe, looks like it. New Scientist magazine. Their concern is that the waves, the low frequency VLF radiation, this Tesla waves, this HARP experimentation, right? It actually can affect the electrical they're affecting mine right now. The electrical behavior of one's own brain activity. That's just, again, don't believe your lying eyes. Don't believe everything that you're seeing. Don't believe what you read. Okay, what happens when you talk out? What happens when you're a somebody and you're against the powers that be? What happens? Well, we'll get there in just a second, but let's one more place. Let's look at Exmouth, Australia. This is the place where we were just looking in Australia that had that weird anomaly that was going on, that impulse on radar. This is the tallest tower, okay? And they have 13 radio towers there. The tallest tower they call Tower 0, and it's 1,270 feet. And for many years, it was the tallest man-made structure in the Southern Hemisphere. Again, 6 towers, each 304 meters tall, are evenly placed in a hexagon around Tower 2. They have a six-pointed thing over there, right? They do. You'll see that also on the end video. Y'all, just these people they're up to no good. They're absolutely up to no good. All right, Hugo Chavez. So Hugo is, he was crying out. He was speaking out. There was that earthquake that had hit Haiti. And Hugo Chavez basically said, he said this. He said, a tectonic weapon under testing by the United States caused the Haiti earthquake. He says, the U.S. was playing God by testing devices capable of creating ecotype catastrophes. The Spanish newspaper ABC quoted him. Chavez said the killer earthquake followed a test of weapon of earthquakes just offshore from Haiti. And in 2010, this is when Hugo Chavez claimed that HARP was triggering and had triggered the Haiti earthquake. He then died March 5th of 2013, and it's possible, some of the reports that I read on him said that he passed from a skin cancer, a soft tissue cancer, like what HARP and those low frequencies are meant to cause, and others say from a heart attack. Also something that it's said that these projects and these waves can cause. Of course, the DARPA, Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA, as they're known, was expected to finish up research at HARP in 2013. So we know for a fact that these guys are all working together, no doubt about it. And Chavez was brave enough to stand up and to call it out. They try and say that his final words were that he didn't want to die, which sounds more like somebody who's being threatened than somebody who, had ongoing soft tissue cancer. Now, I think he was absolutely correct. The Haiti earthquake, right? This may sound, a little bit weird, but declassified, like U.S. documents, that the Army was actually developing injectable radiation assassination drugs, basically. This is back during the Cold War era. and they were looking at assassinating people. CIA was deep involved with these things, and the Church Commission in 1948, they were actually they convened for the Kennedy assassination, and they uncovered the existence of an assassination weapon that had been developed by the CIA to induce heart attacks and soft tissue cancers. No coincidence, right? I don't believe in it. Chavez, he was outspoken. We need more people who are willing to be outspoken, that's for sure. U.S. Army official document from 1948, it says that the U.S. government was in the process of developing a radiation weapon for political assassinations. So I wonder what exists now. That was in 1948. That was according to a 1948 U.S. Army document. So what do they have today at their disposal? It's a little too ironic to be ironic, isn't it? But he said that the killer earthquake followed a test of weapon of earthquakes. Then he goes on to say at least 11,000 troops have been dispatched to the country to provide security for aid distribution efforts. But he believed that this was a U.S. move in occupying Haiti under the guise of a natural disaster. Now, that's the part that I really picked up on. Yes, why are they doing all of this? Why do they have these experiments, these weapons? Why are they modifying the weather? Why are they creating massive drought, massive flood, storms that are just unbelievable? And part of it is for control, for sure, to be able to move the masses. Part of it is just seeing what they can do, how far they can go. I think some of these scientists, HARP, that's the other thing about HARP. It was stopped at a certain point, and the universities are now the ones in charge. So the university in Alaska, Anchorage, it is now the one who is the front man, if you will. But these agencies still work, and their scientists still do work up in these areas at these facilities, which is, they just put a different face on it, slap that sticker on, nothing to see here. It's a university thing. They're just teaching the young children. They're teaching the next generation these scientific things, right? Not. CIA. We're going to talk a little bit about MK Ultra. Again, this all ties in together and how it relates to HARP, right? The high frequency caused by mind altering of masses. Talking about turning things upside down, right? Like, okay. So for years, they tried to say that MK Ultra was just conspiracy and that there was, nothing. And of course, they did investigations into the CIA. They have documents and proof and evidence that it was very real. MK Ultra, y'all, projects like this have been documented and went to hearings again in 1977. Subproject 54 was the Navy's top secret project, and it was called Perfect Concussion. And Perfect Concussion was supposed to use, get this, suboral frequency blasts to erase memory. What? Yeah, suboral frequency blasts to erase memory. Subproject 54, Perfect Concussion. Now, I don't know about y'all, but short-term memory loss of many people that I've spoken with it's getting worse. And it seems like it's getting worse at a rapid rate. And I'm not just talking about older folks. I'm talking about younger people. The ability to focus on something or to remember something that just happened, it is rapidly deteriorating. Why is that? And why would it be happening to so many people at the same time? People who usually have pretty sharp memories. I don't think they stopped MK Ultra. Not for 1 minute. I think they hid it better. They called it something else, but in 1973, most of the MK Ultra records were destroyed. The CIA director at the time, Richard Helms, had them destroy it. Over 150 funded projects were sponsored by MK Ultra and related CIA programs. They say it was begun in 53 and halted in 73. I don't think they stopped. They ended up transferring the name of these projects to universities and hospitals and pharmaceutical companies. The government got out of the direct business. They're more like the middleman, if you will. They put somebody else to be the cover of their cover, didn't they? I really believe that they did. So HARP now is under that control. I was saying of University of Alaska. Oh, it's not Anchorage, sorry, it's Fairbanks. Can it be possible for them to continue projects like this Project Concussion? Isn't it very possible that they're continuing on with these projects on a mass scale? I think absolutely. I think they are, and they will, and they do. It raises a lot of red flags in my book. But again, we have to go back to the Word of God. This is the sort of thing that for some people, it might just be, too much, which if you're not awake to the truth, then it's probably going to be a little bit too much, right? But if you're awake to the truth, then what we need to do is just trust in the Lord. We have been given eyes to see, and I praise his name for giving us eyes to see and ears to hear. But we've just got to stand in his word to know that he's going to care for us. He's going to care for us. And so I think this would fall under that, no weapon formed against us shall prosper. I think it would fall under that verse, don't y'all? Praise God. But look at this. So this 10-year-old girl in the upper right corner, oh my goodness, so underwent 6 months of electroshock and, deprivation, different experiments. Most likely she was probably sexually abused as well. Her memory was erased and her brain was left like that of a newborn baby. That's the sort of thing the United States of America's government and other governments across this earth, that's the kind of thing that they're doing behind closed doors. You want to be a somebody who supports MAGA and all that other stuff? Well, you're on your own. You're on your own. Acid tests. This was another thing. Ken Kesey, he was the author of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. He volunteered for MK Ultra experiments, and he was in college at Stanford University. He later on went to promote LSD-fueled parties, called them acid tests. They had band members, including the Grateful Dead, and had, the lights and psychedelic paint. It kind of began the hippie culture and started out the 1960s psychedelic drug scene. There were other notable people who volunteered for this CIA-backed experiments with LSD, including Robert Hunter, the Grateful Dead lyricist, the Unabomber, and, the James Joseph Whitney burglar, the notorious Boston mobster. The CIA's appalling human experience with mind control. During the Cold War, CIA implored uncharted world of brain warfare. Now, the CIA tried to claim that, well, we're only doing it to keep up with the Russians because they're doing it. Oh, my word. Stop. Just stop with the lies. No, you're doing it because you're sick and sadistic people who have no fear of God Almighty. And you want to see how far you can push the envelope. That's why you're doing it. And there were many harmed during this time. Many harmed. And they're still doing the same thing today, y'all. Genesis 8:22. While the earth remaineth, seedtime and harvest, cold and heat, and summer and winter, and day and night shall not cease. So what does that mean? I think it means that winter and summer and cold and heat and day and night shall not cease. So whatever these, brilliant crayons in the crayon box, whatever they decide to do, whatever these tools in the shed want to concoct, we have a promise that we can stand on. And that is the very word of God, that what he has said will come to pass, will come to pass. Not one moment sooner, not one moment later. It is by his authority and by his power alone, right? Which I love. I love. So whatever they want to do, I truly believe that it is by this judgment, this allowed judgment, just like we read in the book of Job, right? The Lord is allowing it for a time and a season. How many of y'all believe that most of our communications, like our cell phones, right, and radio and things like that, do you believe that it goes through satellites, that it's like spacey stuff. Maybe not spacey, I shouldn't say that, but low Earth orbit. How many of you believe that? That it's our telephones and the pinging that they're doing, the satellites and stuff. See, I thought that. I thought that for a long time, I used to think that. And when I started learning about the cables undersea, oh my goodness, y'all. This was a report in the New York Times in 2021. It says people think that data is in the cloud, but it's not. It's in the ocean. And you see, every cable in line, it's being connected by these links, by these buried cables that are going through the oceans. This is when we're talking about waves, energy, the electrical nature of this earth, magnetism, right? It's in the oceans. And of course, they show a flat earth model because, well, they would have to for this to work, wouldn't they? And over on the left, this is one of those diggers. This thing buries the cables. So undersea cables, not satellites. The demand for undersea cables is only going to grow as people are relying on cloud, another deceptive name. You see, it's all made of deception. Oh, it's high frequency auroral, so we don't look at the low frequency. It's actually creating this mind control issue. Oh, it's cloud computing. So everybody's thinking it's up there, it's in the heavens. They are masters at deception, masters at it. It's a craft. It really is a form of sorcery and witchcraft. And these people, man. So technology is going to be more powerful, right? AI. Just saw these new glasses. Have y'all seen them? They're these new. It's just like Ready Player One, that Steven Spielberg movie that came out where they're all in this virtual world. These new Apple goggles, Apple Googles. If somebody knows the name of it, drop it in the chat because I can't remember the name, but wow. It's bad. Not wow like I'm amazed, but bad. Bad. And I think they're going to start next year. They'll start selling them $4,000. This thing reads your face. It's glasses, goggles you put on, it sucks to your face, and you are immersed. And it's just not good, y'all. Where it's going is not good. And you see, this is why God's word is so important. He says that we are not to love the things of this world, that we are not to have a love for it. Do not love this world or the things of this world. We cannot love our lives unto the death. People are going to they're going to fawn over this. They're going to ooh and ah, and they're going to run towards it and wrap their arms around it because it's going to create comfort. And in a world that is getting ready to, what I believe, go into great tribulation, people are going to be seeking escapism. And the devil is just, once he's got him, y'all, he is not going to do it. He's going to do everything he can not to let go, right? So it's time. We got to be ready. We have got to be ready. 99% of our data or our internet, right, data is not just video, not just voice, but cell phone stuff. It's carried through undersea cables. 99% of it. And just think about it. The winds and the seas are going to roar and howl. And they've got this technology that really is unbelievable. Daniel 7:25 says this, and he shall speak great words against our Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws. Oops, my laws was messed up there. Sorry, y'all. And they shall be given into his hand until a time and times and the dividing of time. Now, the word think is exactly what we think. It's like to bear in mind, to hope. So they're going to hope to change times. But the word times is really what I wanted to focus on. And it is 2165. It's the same as season, time. So right now they're trying to make this over here in the upper left of Aleister Crowley. They're trying to make this the reality. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. That's what they want. They want people to do as thou wilt. They're trying to change times and laws, and the times that they're changing, I think it is, I really believe that this is pertaining to actual seasons. They're trying to change the seasons because, Satan wants to be like God, and he can't. He will fail and fail and fail. Isaiah 58:11 says, "And the Lord shall guide thee continually and satisfy thy soul in drought." Ha, look at that. He's going to guide us continually, satisfy our soul in drought, and make fat thy bones. And thou shalt be like a watered garden, like a spring of water, whose waters fail not. No matter what the enemy tries to do, the Lord has got us. Yeah, this is some interesting stuff right here. Okay, so everybody knows about CERN, right? And they've got their 666 symbol. They've got Shiva. They've got Shiva out there, who's like their lady in their park, if you will, or man in their park. I can't even really figure it out. I don't really understand Shiva. What I have about Shiva is a six-headed skanda, said to be born of Shiva's seed. It's kind of confusing, which was shed in the mouth of the god of fire, Agni, transferred first to the river Ganges, then to get this, 6 of the stars of the constellation of the Pleiades. So can we bind the sweet influences of the Pleiades, as we're told in Job 38:31? Canst thou bind the sweet influences of the Pleiades? We need to ask the Lord, bind those sweet influences, because these people at CERN, they're sitting here with their little Shiva, which has 3 eyes, one that looks inward, apparently inward vision, but the outward focused one is that of destruction, right? And you see, Shiva, it's strange because this was only mentioned 3 times in the Rig Veda, which is like their holy book. He gained importance after absorbing some of the characteristics of an earlier fertility god and became Shiva. CERN is up to no good. And I feel like I'm preaching to the choir here. Y'all know that. But these folks, they've got nothing good in store. They have the little g god of destruction sitting in front of their building. And I do have the video. We're going to go back to the slide real quick, but I've got the video of CERN and the little tata that they did out there, but we'll get to that. You can see the opening of CERN in the middle there with those folks. And the story about CERN is just never ending, it would seem. Boy, oh boy. That bottom left picture, this is actually, it's reported that this vortex basically appeared in 2016, possibly a portal, Geneva, July 5th, 2016. And it wound up making a ring on the radar when it appeared. So this is the ring on the radar that showed up. I just think it's crazy because June 16th, 2016, think about that. So on July 5th, this is another month down the road, they see this satellite ring that shows up around CERN. And a guy also captured some pictures, which we'll get to that as well. But, it's June 16th of 2016, and there was their little motto, 666. So that was an absolute setup date. They started their Wakefield experiment, their advanced Wakefield experiment over there at CERN. And going back to 2015, Yahoo News reported that there was a vortex over Geneva, and people were saying it was a UFO gateway, and that's even what Yahoo News reported it as. In the footage, clouds swirl to a point as if it were a black hole. A number of small bright orbs can be seen entering it, and the vortex then vanishes up. The UFO portal had apparently erupted directly over the Large Hadron Collider. Now they're claiming that the video footage of that has been debunked and that it was just CGI. That's what they tell people. And another one, again, according to the video, the cloud portal, it coincided with an emergency shutdown of the Large Hadron Collider, which happened when a weasel hopped over a substation fence, bumped a transformer, and knocked the power out. They try and say that this is true, but look at CERN, right? And I put Monsters, Inc. up there because they have all these movies that are geared toward children to try and make them want these things to be real, like that it's a good thing. They try and make it welcoming to children, right? And deceive the masses. And there was a ritual said to have taken place, which they'll call this conspiracy, whaties, for believing this. But they really do, I believe. Okay, so CERN has got camera after camera. I mean, thousands of cameras at this research facility, most expensive, largest one, doing the most extensive particle research ever. And they had no idea that this was taking place and that it was just a spoof. Well, if they didn't even know it was taking place on their grounds, even with having all these cameras, how do they know it was a spoof? How can they speak to that? If they're doing an investigation, which that's what the people at CERN were talking about, that they're doing investigations to see there was this ritual murder that happened. And they're trying to say, that's the bottom right picture there from a video, somebody was apparently in like an office there looking out the window and saw these people coming out. Well, you know what? Let's play the video. And there is no sound, so I'll go ahead and play the video for y'all, okay? Now, the person who was videoing that obviously was really disturbed by what they saw, and rightly so. This was nothing less than some sort of a ritualistic human sacrifice that was taking place in front of their god of destruction at the CERN facility. Now, people say we're conspiracy, nuts for believing this, and it was just a spoof. It wasn't real, and that, you're crazy for believing that. Well, what about all the other things that are going on with CERN, right? Why not? What does Shiva have to do with particle matter? What does it have to do with what the scientists are supposedly trying to do anyway? And I say absolutely nothing. And their ceremonies, right? Their opening ceremonies. Look at that. They've got their little portal there with these ghosty like things, entities coming out. Yeah, and their demonic, ritualistic with their Baphomet that they did there on the CERN's ground in the CERN tunnel. They're just leaving themselves wide open for this, criticism. And I think they deserve every bit of it. Here's that storm we were looking at earlier. So it said, now this was in Geneva. That's where CERN is. And I am saying, can CERN produce storms? And the answer to this, I've decided, is an absolute yes. Yes, it can. And we'll see a little bit more here. Now, that's what's so funny about the guy who took these pictures. He got apparently upset because people didn't ask for permission to use his photos, but he posted up there, and I don't know. And it's crazy to me too, because you find dates when these things took place. So this was June 26th, 2016. Well, that happens to be 10 days. If it's right, it happens to be 10 days after the 6/16/2016, which is 666, right? From this experiment that they had done. And these clouds form a strange formation and electrical activities above the CERN complex. It got some media frenzy going, though. The media were talking about it, y'all, which I love. And they said that they were portals in the sky. In light of the fact that LHC, had detected and admitted to creating mini black holes while they were smashing the particles, it could, they talk about inner dimensions and parallel universes, and I don't believe all that. Nope, we were created on purpose, for a purpose, by our Creator. And this earth is unique, formed and fashioned. There aren't a billion, gazillion parallel universes out there. Nope. So one, in the times of Israel, here's the other thing. I found for that picture with the storm, 3 different dates came up. There was one that was on the 6/16/2016. There was one 7 days later, and there was one 10 days later. Same picture. 3 different news outlets, 3 different dates, reportedly, of when the picture was taken. See again, to distract, to confuse, to divert. They don't want us to see what's in front of our face. And, the only thing, I think it was like a 2-day, was it 2-day or 10-day? It was a week to 10 days that they said that these pictures were coming up. But that was all that they said about it, was that the guy said that, the picture wasn't used with his permission. So here's what's funny. If I say, or you say, that they're opening portals, that they're opening gateways, that they're opening doors that they ought not be opening to the underworld, to, devils. If we say it, we are conspiracy theorists. We are crazy. We're Looney Tunes, schizophrenic even. I mean, there were some people who were saying all sorts of just lovely things about people who think these things to be. But in 2014, Stephen Hawking and some other scientists, they said, Stephen Hawking issued a stern warning in his book Starmus. He said the God particle, which is what CERN's looking for, or was looking for, may end up destroying the universe, a concern shared by many other physicists. The main worry is the creation of these microscopic black holes that would grow and eventually decay the Earth from the inside out. And scientists have tried to reassure people that these black holes would not destroy the universe. British astronomer Sir Martin Rees agrees with Hawking that this may open a Pandora's box and unleash, get this, high energy, strange matters that are very unstable. You think? Well, yeah, they're unstable. You're going to release devils into this earth? I'd call them very unstable, yes, and cause a catastrophic vacuum decay that would lead to time and space collapse. Well, I don't believe that, but I do believe high energy, strange matters. Yeah. In the meantime, it says, while scientists concern about this from a religious standpoint, there's a problem with experimenting. Here it says, science meets religion in the search for the God particle. Now, this is what I really wanted to read to y'all. Okay, the religious community is generally suspicious of certain activities. You think? And question, what does the statue of the Hindu god, Lord Shiva, god of destruction, that is prominently displayed outside of the LHC, which is the Large Hadron Collider, CERN, have to do with science? Right? That is our question, yes. Also, they note how CERN is located in a place that was once called Apollyon in Greek. Of course, we know that means destruction. In Roman times, where they believed was a gateway to the underworld. So this very location that CERN is positioned on in Roman times was thought to actually be a gateway to the underworld. So here's my take. If CERN doesn't want nothing, they shouldn't start nothing, right? They really did start this. They started all this craziness. They want to talk about extra dimensions and parallel universes, and I can't LOL. I can't haha and call them conspiracy nuts for thinking that. But we think that because they're literally trying to play God, and they're literally fighting the one true God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, we can't say that these guys are trying to open gateways and portals so that these entities, these fallen angels, fallen angel technology, so that these folks, not even folks, these wickedness can come up from the bottomless pit. Come on. And in just a moment, and suddenly, in a blink of time, right, that key will be given. And that bottomless pit is going to be opened. It's just, there's no time, y'all. You know, scientists, get this. Scientists refer to black holes as bottomless pits of gravity. They actually have bottomless pit in their name. So who are the scientists of today? Who are they, y'all? You know, they also couple it with discussion of opening a doorway into another dimension. Many point to the warning books of Revelation, Revelation 9, 1 through 3. You know, it says, "And the fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven into the earth, and to him was given the key of the bottomless pit. And he opened the bottomless pit." And I'm going to grab my scripture here because I didn't write it all down. All right, we're looking at Revelation 9 and verses 1 through 3. Well, we'll start at 2. "And he opened the bottomless pit, and there arose smoke out of the pit, as the smoke of a great furnace, and the sun and the air were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit. And there came out of the smoke locusts upon the earth, and unto them was given power, as the scorpions of the earth have power." And we'll go on to 4 as well. "And it was commanded them that they should not hurt the grass of the earth, neither any green thing, neither any tree, but only those men which have not the seal of God in their foreheads." You see, there's a day coming when that key will be given. CERN is playing a role, y'all. They're playing a role. The very same day that CERN turned on their LHC, their Large Hadron Collider, was the very same day. Do y'all remember that derecho, which I had never heard that term until July 5th of 2022. Do you guys remember that? The same day CERN turned on their Hadron Collider. And look at the sky. I mean, it turned eerie, wicked green. Yeah, y'all do. You remember that, right? That derecho thing. Had y'all ever heard of derecho before that time? Never in my life. I went back and I couldn't find any news stories about it. But I found one article that like lumped 3 or 4, maybe 5 different derechos that apparently happened in the past that I'd never heard about. But I didn't find any articles about this. They claim it's been a term that's been around for a long time. Okay, I'd never heard of it. So let's look at that. The derecho. And this thing ripped apart, ripped across the earth. It was crazy, powerful. And it moved across South Dakota into Minnesota, Iowa, Nebraska during the afternoon and evening hours. Wind gusts to 99 miles an hour in Howard, South Dakota, with numerous power outages. The second damaging derecho to hit the area in less than 2 months. And the green monster storm, it showed like an apocalyptic green sky as it moved through the area. It did. It was crazy. And look at this. I just went ahead so that we can be clear. On the bottom left, you've got the CERN's Large Hadron Collider fires up for the 3rd time to unlock more secrets. And I've tried to highlight the date there. Tuesday, July 5th, 2022. National Weather Service. Derecho, significant hail. You see those storms. July 5th, 2022. Here we are again. Okay, so bottom right. This is something I was able to find about the timeline for CERN. April 28th, 2017, the Large Hadron Collider once again began circulating beams of protons. It's in the blue highlight with the big yellow arrow, all right, for the first time this year. This follows a 17-week-long extended technical blah, 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 blah. All right, so April 28th, 2017, LHC, circulating beams. Top, tornado outbreak and floods of April 28th through May 1st. When? 2017. Is there is there something that matches here? Yes, there is. Look at that. I mean, you've got tornado outbreaks, and they're massive. Like tornado outbreak. They're saying that, things that are not usual, this severe weather, 3 feet of snow fell on the cold side of the system, and rain fell on the other side. It says that the most significant and damaging events of the storm unfolded late April the 29th, when two large, long-tracking, powerful tornadoes struck near Canton, Texas, the strongest being an EF4. Is there a correlation between CERN and the intensity of the weather we're seeing? Yes, there is. July 25th, 2018, for the very first time, excuse me. So this is from CERN, for the very first time, operators injected not just atomic nuclei, but lead atoms containing a single electron into the LHC. This was one of the first proof of principle tests for a new idea called the Gamma Factory, part of CERN's Physics Beyond Colliders project. So here they inject atoms, right? They inject atoms. Hadron Collider, July 25th. What else happened July 25th of 2018? Survey says severe thunderstorms. During the evening of July 25th, cluster of thunderstorms raced southeastward over portions of north-central Montana, producing a swath of damaging wind gusts and hail up to a quarter size. At times, these thunderstorms were a bow echo, which is a line of thunderstorms that bulges forward as strong or severe winds push through the rear of the storms. As a result, this line of thunderstorms occasionally exhibit a bow shape on radar. Yes, they do. In addition, these storms manage to generate frequent, continuous lightning during much of their lifespan. And man, from what I understand, it was some really intense lightning. Here's another one. And I highlighted the date for CERN because this was 2018. Because down below, October 24th, I probably used too much highlighter there. Sorry, y'all. It says October 24th, and it was from 2018. So all it says is protons performed their last lap of the track. At 6 a.m., the beams from fill number 7334 were ejected towards the beam dumps. It was the LHC's last proton run from now until 2021. As CERN's accelerator complex will be shut down from 10 December to undergo full renovation. Okay, blah, blah, blah. So we get it there, right? The collisions of lead ions allow studies to be conducted on quark-gluon plasma, a state of matter that is thought to have existed a few millionth. Okay, anyway. Look at the typhoon. What date is that? October 24th, 2018. The same date that protons performed their last lap of the track is the date that Super Typhoon, the strongest storm of 2018, hits the U.S. Pacific territory. This thing was bad. Like really bad. I'm going to try and find it here. Okay, so that's not Cyclone Freddy. That's another one. Let me find it. Okay, so it was Typhoon Yutu, Y-U-T-U. October 28, 2018. Hits the same day that CERN does this work, right? A massive typhoon slams, lashing the northern Mariana Islands with gusts of a Category 5. With a Category 5 intensity, Wednesday night local time. Super Typhoon Yutu brought to bear maximum sustained winds of about 180 miles per hour, much more powerful, in other words, than the historical powerful storm that hit Florida 2 weeks earlier. The islands of Saipan, Tinian, and Rota remain under typhoon warnings from the National Weather Service, while Guam and several smaller islands have been placed under a tropical storm warning. Well, wasn't Guam the area where they were doing some cloud seedings back? Just thinking. Huh. Could they be seeding those? You better believe it. You better believe it. So you add seeding to CERN doing these experiments with their high frequencies. Oh, okay. Yes. This is, all right, this is my favorite. And y'all, thank you so much for being here still. We're at, oh my goodness, we're at like 2 hours and 20 minutes. Are y'all still good out there? Do you need me to stop? Or is it okay if I keep going? You want me to keep going, y'all? I've got a little bit more here. I say that. I could go on for a long time. But as far as the slides for tonight go, and I'm going to leave some of the other things. I've got a lot of um, additional stuff that I would love to talk to y'all about because it's crazy. The research and what you can find out is just crazy. Let's go to this. All right. Where to start? What in the flip flap jack? And I say that in my own personal time a lot. That's my choice phrase, my go-to. It just means what in the world. So what in the flip flap jack is going on? There was a London fog. Y'all have heard of this, right? London fog of 1952. There was also a London fog of 1962, but we're going to focus in on the fog of 1952. This was also called the Great Smog of London, called the Great Smog of 52, lethal smog, they say, that covered the city of London for 5 days. So this fog lasted. Now, it's important to pay attention. December 5th was the start date. December 5th. Remember that. It was the start date. And it went until December 9th of 1952. Let's look at some of these slides. So this is the 1952 fog. All of these pictures, my understanding, is they came from that fog of 1952. Y'all, the fog was so dense. It was so thick. People could not see their hand even in front of them. Mind-boggling. They canceled sporting events. They canceled theater, entertainment, things like that. It was a hard time. Well, heavy smog in Piccadilly Circus here in London. Government's policies were at least partly to blame. That's what this this posting says anyway. Because the UK, they say, was exporting clean coal, keeping the sulfur-laden dirty coal for the UK. So they've really played up their reasons. The result was a combination of soot. I found this fascinating. So they're saying that it was soot-laden air and droplets of sulfuric acid. Now, coal has been burned for a long time, centuries. It's been used as a heating source. And never have I heard in any of the other countries that use it of such a problem as what London went through. I'm calling it out, y'all, because I do not believe anything that they've said about the London fog of 1952, and I think that you'll see what I'm talking about. So thick, they had to have people helping people. They said a bunch of people actually fell into the Thames River and drowned to death. 200-foot deep blanket across London. Worst smog, they're calling it smog, ever recorded. Now, I wanted to find out, when I'm looking at this, it was worse than the 1866 cholera deaths after the fog. Now, you look up reports, they'll try and tell you like 35 people died, or maybe it could have been several hundred, 700 or something. No, y'all, it was worse than that. We're talking 12,000. Up to 12,000, if not more, people died during this 1952 smog event. So I started thinking, who was in charge at the time? Who was in charge? Here's what I found out. We're going to look at some pictures while I share this with y'all. So, okay, Queen Elizabeth II, the one who just passed, her dad was King George VI. Now, King George VI died on, February 6th of 1952. King George VI died. Queen Elizabeth was then named queen. So February, remember, we're talking about December 5th of 1952 is when this lethal fog came over England. So she came into power not officially until the following year, but she was named queen. At the moment of his death, she became official queen. So, how many of you remember her husband, Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh? How many of you remember Prince Philip's comments a few years back? You remember that? She married him November 20th of 1947. He is was a distant cousin to her. So, inbreeding, yes, it does take place there. In 1988, Prince Philip, the Queen of England, in 1952, her husband, because they had been married for quite some time by then, right? Been married at least been married a little while, made a comment about death, in which he said, "In the event that I am reincarnated, I would like to return as a deadly virus to contribute something to solving overpopulation." So that should help us to understand where these people's minds are at. Do these people care about their people that they're supposedly rulers over? No, not at all. And he was known, Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, he was actually known as a prince without a home or a prince without a kingdom, like it talks about in Revelation 17:12. Let's look at that, Revelation 17:12. "And the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast." So I just think it's interesting that the dad of King Charles now was known as having the king with no kingdom. What about this prince? Well, I kept searching, I kept looking. Prince Philip was initiated, I knew this was coming, he was initiated into Freemasonry by the Worshipful Master of Navy Lodge number 2612. And he was honoring a commitment that he had made to George VI, the Queen's dad, who made it clear that he expected Philip to maintain the tradition of royal patronage of Freemasonry. They later claim that he didn't continue in it, but I find that bogus. Well, guess what day? Guess what day he was initiated into the lodge of Worshipful Master, right? He was initiated on, did you guess it yet? He was initiated on the 5th of December, 1952. When did the fog start? December 5th, 1952. It is my assertion this was intentional. This was a ceremony. This was a rite of passage. I believe that this was a ritual, an intentional act from the powers that be. And they were doing this on their civilians. And it was basically a sacrifice, a human sacrifice. Even though the effects didn't take place like right then, it would be weeks later, days later. And it was bronchial infections. And who did it affect? The elderly and the children. The elderly and the children. And it wasn't just like a few hundred or a few thousand. We're talking 12,000 people were killed. And does this look familiar? Y'all look at the picture on the right. Huh. Now that was actually in the year after the fog. This picture was, because they figured that it would help. But this is just more of their ritualistic rites that they're carrying on, isn't it? So police using flames at Marble Arch to direct the traffic. And here the article says it was so thick people couldn't see their feet. They say some of the 4,000 who died in the 5 days it lasted did not suffer lung problems. They fell and drowned because they could not see the river. We're talking a dank falling of this fog upon the country. It was really, really bad, y'all. I believe that the devastation that was caused was a directed weapon. That was a directed weapon on the people of London. And of course it had fallout effect. It didn't just stay there. It went hundreds of miles away, as often these weapons do. Here's the other thing. Here's why else I say it was an initiation rite. Because of this fog in 1952, it was the instigator, and I'm going to see exactly how it's written out, but it was the instigator following a government investigation because it killed an estimated 10 to 12,000, if not more, people. This was a chemical weather warfare, right? But not only do I believe that the ex-queen and her, I don't even know what to call him, puppet husband at the time, not only do I believe that they had a major hand in this, but I also believe that this is part of the overall scope of things, right? Because because of this. This was the very first act of clean air. The very first Clean Air Act of 1956 came as a direct result of this fog event. There's the Green Man right there. There's their Green New Deal right there. They try and say, when they go back and tell this story in history, they say that, oh, it was a temperature inversion, relatively cool, stagnant air was trapped under a layer of warmer air. Well, it's crazy, but when you cloud seed and manufacture things, yeah, you're bound to have this happen, aren't you? Mm-hmm. Here's what I found interesting, too. The women, all of the women were talking about the fact that they were going to be cleaning forever. The cars were all covered in this soot, and lighter colored ones had several tones darker that they were covered, that they could write their finger. Icy ponds were covered with a powdered graphite. It seemed to be a powdered graphite. Now, let that soak in too, right? No pun intended. It was estimated that about 300 tons of assorted chemicals deposited over every square mile of the city. They're saying it was because of the fireplaces. It was because of their fireplaces. That's what it was. Yeah. The great coal-burning electricity stations, it says, we're trying hard to reduce the poisonous elements, and cinema screens were obscured by the fog. They couldn't even see the screen. There were murders that increased and looting that increased, of course, because nobody could see what was being done in the dark, right? So it was even, this fog was seeping into people's houses, and it was covering just everything. It was like a goop that was covering everything. The presence of tarry particles of soot gave the smog its yellow-black color. It was yellow-black, and it got the nickname pea souper. So tiny particles of soot. Remember what we were talking about earlier? Soot was the number one thing back then with the earlier stages of the cloud seeding, as far as with airplane technology, that they would drop. They dropped soot. This wasn't because of you trying to stay warm, for crying out loud. This was an agenda. This was them fulfilling an agenda. And boy, did they play that role well, didn't they? Boy, oh boy. Look at this. These are some of the projects, like maps. These are some of the maps, for seeding projects. And it clearly shows Berlin. Remember, World War II had just basically ended. There were still some not happy people around, okay? So Berlin, look what their main objective in Berlin at their seeding projects in the upper right there. Objective, fog dispersal. Remember, they live in upside down land. They live in inverted world. So whatever they're showing us, there's a good chance that it's the opposite, that the truth is the opposite. And I believe wholeheartedly that when it says fog dispersal, what this facility was actually doing, and it says it started in 1999. Come on. No. But the other two over here in Europe, look at that. Year started 1952 and 1952. You see that? It started in 52. It's, again, my humble opinion that the Berlin objective was fog dispersal, not fog dispensal. Okay? I think they were dispersing fog. They were causing fog. They were causing this soot. And I believe there was more in it than just soot. Enough to kill 10 to 12,000 people, affecting mostly the elderly and children. What are they trying to do? We all know the truth, don't we? More seeding pictures here, y'all. I mean, what kind of weather modification has been done? Well, let's just talk about a couple. And I could talk for the rest of the night. We could be here until 1 o'clock in the morning, but I'll spare y'all. Okay, so we'll start here. Mr. Schaefer and his colleagues in the United States of America. It's crazy, but they had Project Skyfire. Before Skyfire, though, they had Storm Fury and Project Cirrus, okay? In October of 1947, there's a program that sought ways, it was to artificially influence precipitation, of course, which this is the cloud seeding like Captain Mac talked about. personnel of Project Cirrus in dry ice seeding flight on a cloudy day. Now, these folks in Project Skyfire, all right, or excuse me, Project Cirrus, I'm getting them mixed up. Project Cirrus, they actually went out and flew into Hurricane King, the U.S. military. Hurricane King was 350 miles east of Jacksonville, Florida. So the airplanes went out. They dropped dry ice, 80 kilograms of dry ice. They dropped into it on October 13th, 1947, thinking that it would just head out to sea or whatever the case was. Well, what happened next was not what they thought would happen. It didn't dissipate, it intensified furiously. It swung around 130 degrees. You want to know how effective doing this manipulation is? It swung around 130 degrees to the west and smashed into Georgia. It caused over $2 million worth of damage. So they stopped Project Cirrus right then because they didn't want the liability. Everybody could see it. It was out there for the whole world to see. So, here's the other part to all of this. When you have major catastrophe, you have major business. It's just like war. War is a moneymaker, okay? Catastrophes, weather catastrophes, it can herd groups of people into a certain area. It can also make people wealthy, can't it? Lumber companies get very rich when a hurricane is getting ready to approach, don't they? The whole thing about doing cables underground and not allowing for these cables to go into rural areas. I didn't hit on this. I want to hit on this real quick. They're not doing that in order because it's so difficult to run these fiber out to rural America. Are you kidding me? It's probably some of the easiest running of cables. You don't have to deal with all the traffic. You don't have to deal with all the whatevers, stray cats coming up and biting you. I don't know. You don't have to worry about it. The reason why they're not running the rural cables, and the reason why they're not fibering up rural America is because they don't want you in rural America. They want to keep people centralized. They want to keep them in cities and compact because it's easier to control the masses when they're all collected, isn't it? And they've got a mass, control going on so many people that they just fall right in line. Let's go back to Project Cirrus. So Project Cirrus was shut down because it did catastrophic damage. And it was working. What they were trying to do was working. Dr. Vonnegut was one of the doctors who worked on these projects. He got his bachelor's degree in 1936, worked for MIT. All these guys seem to work for MIT and things like that, don't they? So chemistry, he joined General Electric in 1945. And General Electric is when Project Cirrus was formed under, his hand. So they worked in conjunction with United States Signal Corps, Official Naval Research, U.S. Air Force, with general oversight handled by, guess who? The Department of Defense, DOD, right? The middle photo, Project Skyfire seeding projects. When Cirrus was terminated, Schaefer, who's in that right picture there, I don't know which one is him. I think he's the one actually in the upper right with the tie hanging over. So Schaefer went to the Munitalp Foundation and helped establish Project Skyfire and a number of other new groups developed to do research in the atmospheric sciences. Vonnegut joined Arthur Little as a research associate and continued his interest in atmospheric electricity with Maynard as an assistant. Wow. So they dropped over 100 pounds, another report said, not just 80. 80 kilograms. So that was over 100 pounds of dry ice into the bands of Hurricane. This is the other thing. They named this hurricane like 3 different names. Hurricane 9, Hurricane King, also known as the 1947 Cape Sable Hurricane. They were trying to keep people off their track. They were dancing around like that hurricane was, weren't they? And they thought that it was going to track out to sea, of course. Project Storm Fury began in 1956. They wanted to seed the outer clouds with bands of silver iodide, and it actually worked. They did these things. 1958, there was Captain Orville who warned if an unfriendly nation solves the problem of weather control, and gets into the position to control large-scale weather patterns before we can, the result will be even more disastrous than nuclear warfare. You better believe it. Project Skywater was led, that's another one, Project Skywater, led by the Bureau of Reclamation, focused on augmenting water supplies in the western United States. Okay, let's look at this. We're almost there, guys. We're almost at the end here. Okay. This is just fascinating to me. There was a laser, May 2nd, 2010, in Germany. Scientists use a laser to generate. We've been told that you can't generate. It has to be, seated in a cloud. No, a laser has been used to generate small clouds on demand in a lab, and this was 2010. You think they can make tornadoes? You think they can make hurricanes? You think they can make all different types of disasters? Oh, my word. Yes, they can. Should they? Should they? Well, that's another question altogether. I don't think so. But, if the Lord allows it, he allows it for a reason. And this nanotechnology, I believe he's warned us about it. There's one other project that I want to look at before I close out here. So this was done in England, and this is called Operation Cumulus. It was carried out August 1952. Again, August of 1952. You think something was going on with the royals? Because that's the same year that King passed away. Elizabeth II is named Queen. Philip has his little hoo-ha down there with the Freemasons. The same day that he's initiated is the same day that the London fog happens. And just 6 months earlier, in August, we have Operation Cumulus. It was an experiment that was carried out by the RAF, or the Royal Air Force, an international team, and, so get that, and international team of scientists in August of 52. So August 15th, 1952, cloud seeding experiments came to a sudden official halt. It's the very day in Devon, England, that they had the biggest and most tragic flooding ever seen in more than 300 years. More than 300 years. 34 people were killed. It was known as the Plymouth flood disaster. 90 meter tons of water and tons of rock came off Exmoor Village. Into August of 1952, an eyewitness said, so remember those clouds we were looking at earlier? Remember those radar signatures we were seeing from HAARP, from CERN, right? An eyewitness said, and remember the derecho and the clouds. Eyewitness said, the purple-black clouds that accumulated over Exmoor. Some even said the threatening sky had a weird greenish tinge. And more than one person observed that the clouds above North Devon and West Somerset were moving in completely opposite directions. Remember the winds we talked about earlier? The Lord tells us the cold comes from the north, warm comes from the south. If we're seeing a mishmash of direction, that is not of our God. He has perfect order in his world. So they were seeing black, purple clouds. They were seeing greenish tinges in the sky. And there's evidence. So what happened is that officially they came out and tried to say it was a hand of God event. That's what they claimed. That's what the government claimed in England. That's what Elizabeth II and her government claimed. It was a hand of God event. See, they're trying to make people hate God. So they won't take ownership. They'll do these projects in secret, and then they'll blame the Lord. Why? The enemy wants people to hate our God. And so creating these events, that's another part. There are so many pieces to this. It's so in-depth. It's not just because they're having fun being Mr. Frankenstein scientists out there. Like, they really want people to hate God. If you create an F5 tornado that destroys an entire town, you think people are going to have some feelings? Yeah. And if people don't know about this, if people don't know about weather modification, about HAARP, CERN, about seeding and all that they have this technology to do, Do you think most people are going to understand? See, a lot of people, if you're not hungry for the truth of the Lord, you're going to turn and you're going to be led astray. And you're going to be angry at the Lord for what's getting ready to happen. Don't do it. Don't be angry at him. He allows these things to happen, but he gives us all the opportunity to repent and to come to a knowledge of the truth in him. And then we have eyes to see and ears to hear. You see, then we're not going to be led astray. We're not going to go down the wrong holes. We're not going to blame the wrong people. We should never blame God anyway. His ways are perfect, even the things that seem to be amiss. We're finite. We're human. We can't understand the mind of God. He tells us that. Who can know the mind of God? Can you understand? Were you there when he laid the foundation, which is solid? Were you there when he laid the foundation of the earth? Were you there? Can you, on your own, bind the sweet influences of the Pleiades? No, we cannot. He is God Almighty, and may his will be done. But they tried to lie. They did lie. They told the people it was an act of God, hand of God event. In 2001, back when the BBC used to actually report and do some, real research, they found previously classified government files that suggested a team of international scientists was working with the RAF experimenting with artificial rainmaking in southern Britain in the same week and could have been implicated. A squadron leader, Len Oatley, who worked on Operation Cumulus, told the BBC that they referred to rainmaking exercises as Operation Witch Doctor. Quite accurate, I would say. Britain's Ministry of Defense denies knowledge of any cloud seeding, but documents show Operation Cumulus was going on between the 4th and the 15th of 1952, August 4th through 15th, and stopped abruptly on the day of the Lynmouth disaster. 9 inches of rain fell on an already, soaked area, and it was within 24 hours, 9 inches fell, causing the Lynn River to flood. An investigator, John Hart, said of the experiments, we flew straight through the top of the cloud, poured dry ice down into the cloud. We flew down to see if any rain came out, and it did. About 30 minutes later, we all cheered. This was intentional, y'all. More pictures of the operation here we'll look at on this slide. I mean, look at that. Those are people on the right up that hill. They're blocked. They can't go anywhere. On the left, same thing. They've got ropes in the river. And they're trying to get people across, you see. So there was denial at the meteorological office of any rainmaking experiments prior to 1955. You see, these people they're liars. These people, they're not interested in us. They're interested in themselves. Weather modification experiments have been going on, before the 1900s. We know that divination is a thing that many use, that there are powers and spirits of the air out there that can be, in the wrong hands, right? People who are nefarious and working for entities in wickedness in heavenly places. Isaiah 54:17, I alluded to this earlier. No weapon that is formed against thee. I would say this is all weapons formed against thee shall prosper, and every tongue that shall rise against thee in judgment thou shalt condemn. This is the heritage of the servants of the Lord, and their righteousness is of me, saith the Lord. Hallelujah. I love it. So I'm going to leave you all with this thought, and this comes from Patrick Henry. Patrick Henry gave this speech in 1775, March of 1775. He said this: it is natural to man to indulge in the illusions of hope. We are apt to shut our eyes against a painful truth and listen to the song of that siren till she transforms us into beasts. Is this the part of wise men, engaged in a great and arduous struggle for liberty? Are we disposed to be of the number of those who, having eyes, see not, and having ears, hear not, the things which so nearly concern their temporal salvation? For my part, whatever anguish of spirit it might cost, I am willing to know the whole truth, to know the worst, and to provide for it. And that is my goal. We will provide the whole truth, even if it takes us almost 3 hours to do it. No. Okay. Well, y'all, that's it for tonight. That's all I've got. I am so glad. Thank you. I invite you to come and subscribe, and a lot going on. I'm just really thankful. So thank you guys. Thank all of you for being here. Thanks for hanging out with me. God bless you all. I love you guys.